we need government intervention now. It doesn't have to be a private sector thing anymore. It has to be a PPP where government is now investing in infrastructure, for instance, and giving this infrastructure to the private sector to build upon. It has to be also a collaborative effort, for instance, where private sector or the internet service providers are now agreeing that let's share infrastructure to reduce our cost, for instance. So that's one challenge. The other challenge has been, you know, the likes of Aisha, when you give her a phone, what does she do with it? If you look at the content structure of Africa, a lot of our content, internet content, is on entertainment. And so a lot of them will not understand what they have to do with it if it's just entertainment. But if we then now put content that allows them to learn or even allows them to trade their wares, or we teach them how to sell their wares, the economic activity, if we give them content that are relevant, then they are able to, you know, make use of it. And then finally is, you know, the cost of handsets. I think this morning, Ms. Bogdan Martin mentioned it, how expensive it is to get a handset. We tried in Rwanda with Mara phones to try and assemble phones so it becomes cheaper, but it wasn't cheap. The cheapest was around $120. That's very expensive for the average African. So we need to also see how we make devices cheaper. Now, I'm not talking about feature phones, because we did a survey with the youth and they said, look, I want that iPhone that you're holding, but I want it at the cost that I can afford. I don't want to buy it at that amount. So we need to talk to, and I know there are stakeholders here, the Googles of this world, the Qualcomms, the people in part of bringing a device, but also the government, on the government side. What are the taxes that can be taken out? What are the incentives that can be taken out to make these smartphones, not feature phones, smartphones affordable so we can all use it? In fact, if you look at the coverage, you know, situation of Africa, over 80% it has mobile coverage, but 40% are connected, and that's because of affordability. And then there comes skills, and then, you know, relevancy of the content. And these are all things that we can do something about. The only thing that I think we've talked too much about and done nothing is the investment part, in terms of the government coming in to invest. We have the Universal Service Access Funds. If you check the status of these funds across some countries, some are dormant, some are being used for all sorts of other things that are not, you know, that they are not supposed to be used for. So why don't we go back to why these funds were created to solve the situation? For me, I think we've spoken about it for too long. The solution lies in front of us, and governments are able if the will is there. So the issue, one other barrier I would add before I end, is the political will. We need to have that political will to solve this issue. Let's not, you know, continue talking. We can do something about it, and let's do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tama. There's quite a lot in a very short intervention, but I think what is important to bring out, because it showed up a number of times as you were speaking, is this need of the private sector and the public sector cooperation and creating those policy incentives together to make sure that the market works in every region and in every circumstance, and that actually requires a lot of collaboration between the government and the private sector. So I'm going to turn to Sally, who has worked on these issues for quite some time now, and in coming into to this role that you have now with ISOC, I'm just asking, what is ISOC's perspectives on these issues, and what is some of the work that you have done in this area together?
Thank you very much, and for the opportunity to speak on this topic. This topic of connectivity is one that's very near to the Internet Society's heart. Our mission and vision is that the Internet is for everyone. And so the fact that we still have over a third of the world's population not connected to the Internet means that we have a lot of work to do, and that's work that the Internet Society is very committed to. I was taken with the stories of my colleagues before me, and particularly the story of Aisha, where she's in a community where there may not be a business incentive to connect. The Internet Society has been in the space of connecting hard-to-reach communities for whom there may not be an initial business incentive. And what we do is really look at a community-centered approach, a bottom-up approach to connectivity that ensures that people in their local communities are empowered, are resourced, are trained, and are skilled enough to build the community networks or to build the networks for themselves. We believe that with a small investment, and we have quite a bit of experience with this, that local communities that are supported in this way can build the networks, they can maintain the networks, they can sustain their connectivity, and ultimately they can defend it. And that is a hugely powerful model of connectivity that I think we need to look more at as a global community as we think about how we bridge this final digital divide. We have done this since 2020. We have provided funding and technical assistance to over 60 community-centered connectivity solutions around the world. And this is a major part of our strategy going forward. And I was asked to provide a few examples, and just a few minutes before I walked in here, I stopped by the booth of the Internet Society chapter in Tanzania, who last year was awarded with the WSIS Prize for the Tanzania Digital Inclusion Project, which really does embody this community-centered connectivity approach. And here what they say is that they have connected over 1,800 citizens to affordable and meaningful broadband internet, trained 4,000 youth and women on essential digital skills, are training teachers on e-learning skills. This is all being done by the local community for themselves. They understand what is needed, they understand what the gap is, and by ensuring that through, in this case, a chapter, that ensures that that connectivity is sustainable over the long run. They're actually, interestingly, now looking at a program to make the smartphones more affordable, particularly for women entrepreneurs, through a financing program that allows them to use this technology then for their own social enterprises and the like. We've seen these kind of solutions work both in Africa, outside of Africa. We were very happy to deploy the highest community network in the world in Mount Everest to connect the Sherpa communities in Nepal, who are feeling the effects of climate change on their economy. And the lack of connectivity has been a real barrier for their people to participate in the digital economy going forward. By connecting that community, they now have access to medical care, but also to skills and training opportunities that might expand the economies in those communities. Airbnb is coming in. Some of the Sherpas are now opening their homes via Airbnb, and again, providing different kinds of opportunities for that community to participate in the global digital economy. So this model of community-centered connectivity, we don't have to wait for the solutions to come in. Communities can connect themselves, I think is a powerful approach to this, and one that, again, as I said, the Internet Society has been committed to and will continue to be committed to. Going forward, and I know this is the topic for the second part of this panel, what we want to really think about and work with partners on is, as we're bringing these populations online, how do we ensure that they have the skills and the expertise to participate in the global digital economy safely and securely? So it's not enough to just bring connectivity in. We need to ensure that people have the skills to participate safely and in a way that gives them confidence that their information is protected, and that they, that they feel safe and secure. So these are things that we're taking very seriously, and I think are important as we think about how we bring connectivity to the final 2 billion people who are not online.
Thank you, Sally. You've mentioned the importance of making sure that in the communities there are ways of building up networks. There's the importance then to connect the small networks to the larger grid, and also making this work in a way that it works in investment, it works for the trainings, and it works for the long-term sustainability and resilience of these networks. So there's a lot of works between the various different partners and stakeholders on making all of this happen. I'm curious, Dr. Imagawa, how do you see this from the Japanese perspective and from your perspective in sitting in the government? What are the actions that governments can take to help incentivize connectivity?
Well, thank you, Chair. I'd like to add a little bit different point of view in this panel. Well, despite the advancement in digital technology, there remain 2.6 billion people worldwide who are not yet connected to the internet, and there are still many people who cannot fully enjoy the benefits of digital technology. It is crucial to further accelerate international cooperation to build an inclusive digital society. As you know, emerging technologies such as AI can only be effectively utilized when connectivity is realized. Ensuring connectivity is a prerequisite for reaping the benefits of digital technology. Also, we should avoid letting these emerging technologies create a further divide. In addition to providing physical access, it is essential to ensure that these technologies are affordable and that individuals have the necessary literacy and skills. Therefore, achieving UMC, that is universal and meaningful connectivity, is extremely important. Japan welcomed the GDC adopted at the UN Future Summit. The first commitment listed in the GDC is addressing the digital divide, and the importance of UMC is also mentioned. Achieving the GDC commitments, including bridging the digital divide, cannot be accomplished through a top-down approach by the UN or member states alone. Cooperation among multi-stakeholders is essential, as pointed out in this IGF many times. Significant efforts have already been made, and we need to continue building on these achievements. In particular, next year makes the WSIS Plus 20 review. The WSIS initiative should be complementary to the follow-up of the GDC. So during this upcoming review, it is necessary to thoroughly consider the existing multi-stakeholder efforts, identify challenges, and outline the next effective steps. The IGF provides a vital platform for diverse stakeholders in digital technologies to gather and engage in active discussions. This forum exemplifies the importance of multi-stakeholder efforts, and we firmly believe that extending the IGF's mandate is indispensable from the perspective of eliminating the digital divide. As highlighted in the GDC, the role of the ITU is significant. We recognize that ITU's substantial contributions to bridging the digital divide, especially in developed countries, through their various initiatives. Japan will continue to support these efforts by the ITU. Please allow me to briefly introduce Japan's domestic initiatives. Japan has significantly advanced its domestic broadband infrastructure development, where the national coverage rate of optical fiber services for households reached 99.84% in 2023, and population coverage rate of mobile phone services reached 99.99% in 2022, achieving one of the world's highest levels of broadband infrastructure. We understand that these almost 100% broadband coverage of both fiber and mobile are coming from the good mixture of a competition policy and government support for non-profitable regions. We have been promoting competition between the dominant incumbent and the entrance by the asymmetric regulation, as well as introducing the mechanism of so-called universal service fund, and also financial subsidies to the players operating in non-profitable rural areas. We believe that mixture of regulatory and financial frameworks is indispensable to realize UMC. In addition, Japan is achieving promoting research and development of non-terrestrial or space network technologies such as high-altitude platform stations called HAPS, which provide connectivity in remote areas where communication infrastructure is not well established. This is part of our efforts to advance the next generation communication infrastructure by beyond 5G or 6G. We are also assisting the capacity building programs of digital utilization, such as the use of the smartphones and the digital ID card called My Number Card, or protection against cyber attacks, and so on. So through such initiatives of the regulatory and financial frameworks, as well as the efforts of research and development, and also capacity building, and by sharing our various experiences with our multi-stakeholder community, we'd like to contribute to enhancing the global connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Imagawa. So as this was the first sort of thought starters, ideas from the first half of our panel. So what we're trying to take away here, and what I hear a lot about, is the role of partnerships, the role of working together, to bringing in different stakeholder communities, different communities from the local, regional, global level, to try and find solutions that are sort of universal in spirit, but work at the local level. So I'm hearing calls for partnerships at the grassroots level to reach out and train and find the people and talk to them in their own, not necessarily just their own language, but the way that they live in their own situation. What I'm hearing calls for enabling policy environments to make sure that we work together, governments, businesses, civil society, the technical community, to make sure that we incentivize investments, we incentivize trade and commerce to actually help facilitate affordability of connectivity and of devices, incentivizing investment in skills and in training programs, and of course then making sure that we incentivize this cooperation at the global level, and we come together in fora like this one to have these conversations and then cooperate with partners outside our local communities, outside our nations, to make sure this all works the same way that the internet works at the global interconnected level. So we have a little bit of time to turn to the audience for some reactions on this, and then we'll turn to the second panel. If you have any comments or questions, please wave your hand high so that my colleagues can see you. And when you speak, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Connecting Ordinary Citizen to Digital Opportunities Online. No, I'm just kidding. My name is Dr. Naza, Nicholas Kirama from Tanzania. And I wanted to make a comment on the effect of connecting schools to the internet. When you get time, you go through our booth, you will see that we've been able to connect about 10 schools to the internet. And what we are getting from the schools that we have been able to connect in Tanzania is that the school students, there is a lot of improvement in terms of their grades that they are getting from their exams, and also the teachers that we have engaged in our programs. They have been able to go online, access different courses, and through these courses, they have been able to improve their skills, their teaching skills, as well as, upgrade, taking different free courses online. And before the connectivity, teachers were not able to access free courses online because the access was very limited. They didn't have any broadband internet access in their schools. And with that, it was impossible for them to stay online for a long time to be able to study the courses online. So connecting schools, connecting the communities, the ordinary citizen to the to broadband internet has enabled the communities that we serve in Tanzania access digital opportunities online. So we have a lot of improvement in terms of grades, and also the teachers now can be able to read and improve their teaching skills online without ever looking over their shoulder that their data bundle is going to exhaust. So it is very important to continue to build alliances around the world to finance the connectivity for schools, connectivity for the rural communities, and also the underserved urban communities as well. So I think the idea of connecting people to digital opportunities online is very important, because ultimately you will find ourselves in a situation where when you connect people, the next frontier will be what sort of empowering skills that we need to deploy to these communities so that they can stay safe and they can feel comfortable to stay online. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that comment. Indeed, I think a lot starts once we are able to get a school online or get a library online, because they are the hearts of the communities they function in, and then the ripple effect is clearly palpable. Do we have any other comments or questions? I don't see anybody. There you go, sorry, yes.
Hello everyone, my name is Arjun Singh Vijoria from Vijoria Foundation in India. My question is that it's based on the use of internet and AI in evaluation, the examination. Now I just want to let you know, I want your opinion on the, how we can create a uniform framework for the evaluation of the students' examination. Is that possible to create a uniform framework for the evaluation throughout the world? I just want your opinion on that. A uniform digital evaluation framework on the evaluation of students' examinations.
Thank you for that question. Would anybody from the panel care to respond to that question? Are we able to? Okay. The panel is asking if you could clarify your question, please.
Yes, certainly. You know, in the education system, every degree having the final examination, right? Okay. Now, can we create a digital platform or say framework, digital framework through which we can use the technology to evaluation of the students throughout the world? That is my question. Based on the technology, internet and AI. You know, every country is having different evaluation process. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I can try and answer that question. Since you said you're from India,
Yep.
There are many AI evaluation-based frameworks which have been created in the education space, both in the private sector and the civil society sector in the not-for-profit space. I can tell you one example. One of the partners that Meta in India works with is a foundation called Rocket Learning Systems. And all that they do is use AI evaluation on actual physical answer sheets by deploying thousands of teachers who have based their evaluation by first physically evaluating them. And then they have created a machine learning tool to assess how they can give feedback digitally to improve upon the evaluation ecosystem. So as a result, the feedback loop that the teachers have created is going back to the student at the end of it, And using AI analytics tool, they are able to point to them where they need to work harder. This is in the civil society space, not-for-profit space, and I'm happy to connect you with Rocket Learning. Similarly, in the private space, many of the edtech companies are doing the same thing. So one is to deliver education, the other is to assess education programs based on the tutorials that they run, how AI analytics can help them, and happy to share those examples async after the session as well. But yes, to answer your question, the possibility definitely exists. It is already being deployed. And what that would do is, which I was going to respond to when Tamio comes to me, is it solves two issues. One is of scale, given that in a country like India, for example, over 1 billion people, let's say about 300 to 400 million students coming online every year, you will be able to solve the problem of scale of giving real-time feedback used on AI tools. And the second is the complexity of the language, which is a point I'm going to talk about in detail subsequently, is how using AI analytic tools, you can solve the language issue to give feedback to those. Even if the teacher doesn't know the language, AI tools can help understand better assessment of such frameworks.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for jumping in on that, Shivnath. I think we have time for one last question on this first segment of the panel, if there is anybody from the floor. My colleagues are getting a workout to make sure we get the microphone to you.
My name is Professor Nabil. I'm presenter of Creators Union of Arab in United Nations. So I was last year in Kyoto, and the same problem was, we were talking about the same problem, but actually I didn't see any action plan. I'm sorry to say that I have some plan to do some rules, enforcement rules, and I'll give you some examples. Why not we do, like if you need to promote as a faculty member in this area, so you have to teach some people in that area. We have to draw some rules in order to help some society in order to be educated enough to use the internet and so on. In Arabian Gulf, for example, in all the countries, if you have a company, then you have to have some local people in your company in order to proceed. And this is their rights. And also their rights, the people who don't have any connection in the internet, to enforce the people who has internet, to teach them in order to take your rights in your job, in your promotion, in your salary sometime, I'm sorry to say this. So we need an action plan in order, it's called enforcement action plan in order to help those people in a different area. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Would anybody from the panel like to address the important question of skills development? Can we have the microphone here?
I can also.
Oh, it was switched off.
Switched off. Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. And I think two things. One is the importance of skills. We can't overemphasize that. The story I told earlier of Famous, the reason he was able to advance is because he picked the first skill in using spreadsheets, and that led to others. But the second, which also ties into the story of skills, is the need to empower communities. Sally spoke earlier about that, and I think it's really important because learning is not just about the content, it's also about the agency. It's also about realizing the fact that this is not something given to me by others because they pity me. This is something that I am given access to, and I think this is really important. This is why one of the things, when Thelma talked about the Universal Services Funds earlier, I was pretty excited because we did a whole report on, and I will actually be speaking about that, tomorrow at one of the lightning talks about 26 African countries and what they have done with USFs. And you're right. Many times, the solution we need to connect the last mile is already there. You've collected the money from the taxes, but we need action. And I think that's the phrase you just used. We need people to be literally forced to act. So I think it's important to have a sense of agency in learning, and it's absolutely important to make sure that the community buys into it, because we have done projects that were literally protected by the community. In one of those times, I was leading a project called Lagos Digital Village, and there was a situation where people were fighting and it became very violent. The security guards in the area who had children who were learning from the center came to my office, locked the door, locked the gate, and when everything happened and everything settled down, I asked them what was going on. They said, well, we were protecting you because you're the one training our children, and we have protecting this center because if they destroy the computers in this center, our children and their children and the next generations will be as poor as we are. So I think when communities get a sense of agency and ownership, it not only helps to learn, it also helps to protect and to make this sustainable.
I can also add to it.
Go ahead, please.
So I couldn't agree with you more. I'm Tammy Bomick. I'm from Roblox, and I'll get into a little bit more. I'll explain what Roblox is, but I can't agree with you more. I lead an area called Civility at Roblox, and our sole focus is to bridge the education gap between children, parents, and teachers. And if we're going to create a global community that will thrive in this next generation of the internet, we must educate everyone. And so our focus really is working with partners from around the world to make sure that we're getting evidence-based data to be able to inform and educate parents, teachers, and children, so that they can grow up in a much safer place. But I can get into that during our session.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tammy. And I think that's a great segue in going into the second half of the panel. We've heard a lot as we were talking here together with the audience, but also as I was listening to the first part of the panel on what happens once people are online. We want to make sure that we bring people online so that they can reach their full potential, whether that's for education, accessing important services like healthcare, or their own maximum potential on the job market, or actually developing in entrepreneurship or making businesses grow. So those are all the positives, the great stories, what we want to happen. But of course, there's also sometimes challenges with coming online. So that's what we try to address in the second part of the panel. So once people are online, what is it that we still need to do to make sure that connectivity is meaningful, that actually works? So to start us off and sort of make the connection between the first half of the panel and the second, I'm going to turn to Ala Abdulal from the Digital Cooperation Organization, and would love to hear from you from the DCO perspective a little bit. How do you work to address digital divides, and what are the challenges that you see that come with rapid connectivity?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm very honored, first of all, to be in this session and even to be the first speaker to connect both aspects. And I would like to highlight some of the important points that my colleagues here in the panel have mentioned, which is looking at that there is almost more than a third of the people are still not connected. And then we talked about some skills that they need to be from a digital literacy perspective, and how it's very important for everyone to have that right skills once they are connected. At the Digital Cooperation Organization, our mandate specifically is to make sure that every person, every business, every country and nation has a fair opportunity to prosper and have a fair opportunity to grow in the digital economy, the cross-border digital economy, and to have that inclusive and sustainable growth. So it is part of our objective and goal is to also bridge the digital divide and make sure that everyone is part of this ecosystem and the acceleration of digitalization that is going on. And for us to do that, let me go back. We are a 4 years old organization, so we are actually new. We started by when the organization was built, it was very important for us to understand what are the different challenges that are hindering the progress and the participation to be part of this digital economy growth or even digitalization growth. And this is why we have done a lot of global roundtables. We have done 5 at the beginning of 2022, 2023, to really understand those challenges. And the insights were similar to what we're saying, which is there is a lot of countries are struggling with, do they have the right infrastructure for them to be connected? Do the nations have the right skills when they are already connected? Are the policies and regulations from the country are enabling people not only to be connected, but even businesses to grow in this AI era? And a lot more. There is cooperation between different countries and organizations? Are the businesses involved in the running and in the setting? Are they co-creating those policies with their countries and governments? And then also, again, if we want to really make sure that everyone have a fair opportunity, we need to start measuring things. Because again, just saying that there is a gap, there is a divide, we already have numbers that 2.6 million people are not connected. But okay, how can we start measuring how countries can start progressing? And this is why we put it among ourselves in the DCO. We had that goal is that, okay, let's first of all create a framework to look at the digital economy. Have that, and I think one of the audience who have asked, do we have a unified framework? So it was, yes, for us, we need to build a unified framework definition on how to measure the digital economy. What is needed for each country for them to progress, to grow, to have all their nation connected and have that fair opportunity. And we launched recently during the UNGA in New York, the Digital Economy Navigator, which is a tool that we put the framework on how to measure the digital economy. We assessed 50 countries for them to understand where do they currently stand from a digital economy perspective. We put different level of categorization from a maturity perspective, identified that we have 3 dimensions. We need to tackle it from a business perspective, from a society perspective, and then having that dimension of what would enable the society and businesses, identifying 11 pillars, different pillars from infrastructure, from digital transformation, having the right regulations, having the right digital skills, education, health, and different sectors. And then we assessed those 50 countries and gave where do they stand, what is the gap, how they can move forward. We've done that huge analysis through different lenses. Through the 11 pillars that we have, we looked at different regions because, again, you need to create synergies. Not every country should work alone. We can work together, and this is, you find all of these findings in the report that we have launched, and I hope that everyone had the chance to look at it, which is the Digital Economy Navigator report, with that set of recommendation where we can start creating synergies targeted to government, targeted to private sector, where we all have to work together. Because again, we believe in the approach of cooperation. We are the Digital Cooperation Organization. Cooperation is our middle name, and this is how we try to work. Because we believe that we are in a world, we do not want to leave anyone behind. How can we guarantee we don't leave anyone behind? We have to work together. So again, the Digital Economy Navigator, I think we believe that this navigator will help in starting to measure the maturity, to have that, if we identify what is the gap, let's build actionable plan, which is also one of the audience was mentioning, and then let's measure, are we progressing or not towards those different pillars from, as we said, connectivity, skills, infrastructure. And for us, we took all of those findings. Those findings were not just a one-year work. We have been working for 3 years to gather the data and to really have that understanding to bridge the digital divide. And we created what we call the digital space accelerators. Those accelerators are focused on the challenges and the gaps that we are finding. Again, going back to finding the synergy between different stakeholders and different countries. The Digital Space Accelerator, we identify each year specific topics that are very important, that will help making sure that the future is inclusive and sustainable, and that everyone has that fair opportunity to grow. And we try to have that multi-stakeholder approach where we create different topics with different groups. We bring governments on the table, we bring private sector, academia, experts, and we try to solve that challenge. We created a group for, which Sarah, you have mentioned, women empowerment, how they can be empowered in the ICT and through the ICT. We created a group for misinformation online and how it's important to solve that issue. Also AI, ethical use of AI, and different, and we almost covered along 11 topics last year and this year. It's all built on one mechanism, which is bringing all the right stakeholders, not only government, but government, private sector, think tanks, experts, and not only focusing on one country, rather than we go through different global roundtables to really capture the different aspects, different insights from and angles that each expert and each region can bring to. And we try to build those solutions. And again, there is a report in our website that reflect that journey of the digital space accelerators and the different topics that we have. And this mechanism produced almost 11 publications that are giving specific, some of them are toolkits, some of them are for unified frameworks, policy recommendation, and we hope by this mechanism we really would help in bridging the digital divide. In addition, last but not least, that I want also to highlight of some of the cases that we are working on, which my colleagues mentioned, the skills, and even enabling digital transformation for different businesses. We have what we call We Elevate. It's a program that we have where we enable women-led businesses and help them to have the right skills to transform digitally from regular businesses to businesses online. This is giving them an opportunity not only to have digitalization for the sake of digitalization, but even expand their businesses. Being online mean having bigger outreach, being cross-border, and this really has been already launched in different countries of our member state, and we are targeting to digitalize 300 women businesses, giving them even the right skills and understand and the courses that will enable them to be online. Just as a final point, I really iterate that we believe that cooperation is the solution. No one nation can work alone and solve all of the issue. It has to be a collaborative approach where countries work together, private sector, international organization, NGOs, all of us try to work together hand in hand to solve those challenges and bridge the digital divide.
Thank you so much for that comprehensive presentation of all your work. What strikes me is the fact that you're talking about collaboration between nations, which is very important, especially as we see how difficult it is sometimes for nations to agree on the way forward. So producing incentives, toolkits, opportunities for them to meet and collaborate and identify perhaps common challenges that require their common solutions is very important. But you've also mentioned sort of building blocks of the digital economy itself, starting from connectivity, but working all the way up our way into the most recent technologies. So how do we move from bridging the divides for connectivity so that we can make sure that we are not widening the divides as we move rapidly along with the development of technology. So this brings me to José Renato, because you work a lot on emerging technologies, and see how do you see connectivity as a prerequisite to what we need, where we need to arrive with AI and digital technologies, and what do we need to enable access to everybody to those technologies as well?
No, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Oh, okay. It was a bit too loud, maybe. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. And yes, I have been looking a little bit, have been looking to this topic, and I think that connectivity is, we have talked a lot about access. Have talked about how we should universalize connectivity, access to digital tools as a whole. And I think that we have been working on this for a while, and we haven't yet achieved it. We have not achieved this universalization yet, but I think that we should also start thinking about how can we include, how can we be allies of this community so they can also help shape the digital agenda, shape the digital futures. And we have, despite the many benefits that we can see that digitalization brings, and I think that most of my colleagues here mentioned a lot of them, having access to job opportunities, having access to the possibility of learning, of reaching wider audiences. I think it also relates to like how can we include these people so that they can also think about how is the future of technology that they want in order to serve their own purposes, and which includes also the purposes that we need in order to like solve climate issues, environmental issues as a whole. So for this, I think that it's very important that we look, for instance, to how local communities are using these technologies and are being impacted by them. And I think that the Brazilian Amazon, especially among indigenous peoples, bring very important clues on where are we going and what are the challenges that we have and the opportunities out there. And most recently, especially in the last 2 years, we have been having what I see as a transformation out there. For years, we have more indigenous communities being connected either through community networks or more traditional ways of having access to internet. But nowadays, especially when we look into the Amazon, where traditionally the Brazilian state and telecommunication companies have been failing to provide connectivity to these people. One new factor is out there, which is low Earth orbit satellites, especially when you think about Starlink. And to some degree, these technologies are allowing many of these peoples to communicate between themselves, to have access to social benefit, but at the same time, they bring a whole new challenge, which is they are also facilitating access to people who end up being enemies of these communities. And I'm talking here about invaders of indigenous territories, of illegal gold miners, of land grabbers, and so on. So this brings us to a paradox here. On the one hand, these technologies are facilitating the capacity of indigenous to resist to these people, but at the same time, they're contributing to this cycle of violence to be perpetuated. And this is even more problematic when we think that, for instance, if you think about the Yanomami people in Brazil, their territory has been witnessing the invasion of many of these gold miners, sometimes even to fuel the digital economy. They have been extracting gold and selling to many big corporations, big tech corporations that are across the world. So how can we be their allies in resisting against these challenges, especially when we consider that, and this is the case of many of the Yanomami communities, they had to decide and sometimes even go against their own habits, their own ontologies to connect in order to resist these problematic features of both these invaders, but also of how the industry develops itself as a whole. So something has to be changed. And I think that it's very important that these people end up participating in the design of these digital futures, both on a degree of developing these technologies, but also of thinking about policymaking. And I think that 4 main issues should be pushed forward, and we're here in a forum of multi-stakeholder forum, and I think that we should think about possibilities for us to be allies of these groups. And I think that, first of all, and I think that has already been mentioned by many of the other participants, digital literacy is fundamental, and not just to use correctly these technologies, but also to help them develop and critically assess what's going on among them, and also with regard to their infrastructures, so the infrastructures that are on the basis, on the fundament of these technologies. So the first, digital literacy. The second is their ability it's help them address the risks of monopolies, and I think that state action here is fundamental. Thinking about how can we create alternatives, especially considering that Starlink's controlled by Elon Musk, who has been frequently challenging Brazilian authorities and failing to comply with many institutional demands that are made to him. Third would be to think about governance measures that allow for popular digital sovereignty. In Brazil, there are many movements happening in this regard. One of them is the homeless workers movement, which talks a lot about popular digital sovereignty, which is not only sovereignty, digital sovereignty on a state level, but also to communities to control their data, to control their platforms. And finally, enabling, help build bridges so they can also participate in policy-making efforts. In Brazil, for instance, in the debates on AI regulation, we have already had 3 years of debate, and only one indigenous representative, who was Chimeia Vaité, managed to participate. Our organization is very happy to have been an ally in this stance, but this has to change. This has to change. And I think that, as Davi Copenau Yanomami, who is a very important indigenous leader in Brazil, says, all of these mechanic machines should also be appropriated by these peoples, because it is their blood and their metals, the resources in their land that are feeding them. So they should also find ways, we should help them find ways to appropriate them in order to shape these digital futures that I'm talking about. Some initiatives are already on the way. The Brazilian Internet Steering Committee is working a lot to connect these communities, along with many other organizations, including the Instituto Socioambiental. ISOC also participates in many community networks being built there and beyond. But I think we should give one step further. And I think that COP30, which is going to take place in the Brazilian Amazon in 2025, is a very important forum for us to bring the discussion, how to find ways to bridge, to create bridges so that these communities can participate in the shaping of these digital futures. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that input and for highlighting the need of not only connecting people to the internet and the technologies, but also connecting them to the conversations that we have about these technologies, and make sure that we shape those together with those who we are trying to target. You've also mentioned emerging technologies and AI, and we've kept hearing AI creep in these sessions, and I think it creeps into every session that we have at the IGF recently. So I want to turn to Shivnath and ask a little bit about what you feel are the persisting challenges to achieve inclusivity, not only in connectivity, but at the end of the spectrum that we have, maybe not at the end of the spectrum generally, but where we are now with the development of technology. How do we connect people inclusively to the latest developments when we already see that we are facing challenges at the beginning of the spectrum also?
Thanks, Timur, and thanks for inviting me, Meta from India, on this panel. I will, in the spirit of being a very, very die-hard optimist, I'll try to paint a more realistic, pragmatic, and positive picture of what I see as the future, and hopefully will address some of the concerns my friend Jose has. But more importantly, I want to pick up one line each from each of the speakers to try and create a framework of why we must use technology for the sake of technology. it is very important to sometimes sit back and think, why have we failed over 2.3 billion people of this world so far? I'm sure Sally will agree that even if we give them network, even if we give them connectivity, it may still not solve for the need of the internet. Because the internet as we know in our languages may not be the internet that we will be able to provide for them in their language, or in the complexity of the environment they live in, which is affordability, access to device, etc. So I think if you step back, and Mr. Sasan said, no one should be left behind, internet is that critical if you provide it to people. Thelma said, the over pivoting on private sector investment has not really led to the result that you want to see on the ground. Our friend from Japan said, could it be the futuristic technology like AI which helps us solve it? Ms. Abdullah said, cooperation between nations. Fully agree, and I'll tell you why one by one. At Meta, we definitely feel the answer to this future is open source technologies, which Meta professes. And I will tell you through examples why so. Let's take the issue of language. You said no one should be left behind. Today, it is possible using a program like NLLB 200, which Meta runs. It's a program called No Language Left Behind, where almost 200 languages can be translated directly with each other. Normally, the framework of translation is you take a language, get it down to English, from English to the other language. Today, NLLB makes possible 200 languages to be translated directly. There's an offering in the open source world called Universal Translator, where languages which are known as low resource models, where you do not have a written script of a language, those languages can be trained using AI models so that these languages become inclusive as a part of the general internet ecosystem. What is it that's solving for? Is inclusivity. It is solving for those very people who are outside the world of the internet to be brought into the world of internet. So while we solve for physical connectivity, physical infrastructure, you must solve for this. Let's look at some more examples of where open source technologies like our large language models, Llama, has been able to help, and I will give you some Indian examples. I was telling my friend from India about examples in education. I will talk about agriculture. In our part of the world, agriculture is a serious issue, right? But if you deploy open source technology, you can actually give the information relevant to the farmer on the device using Llama. There is a low cost model of Llama which you can deploy on the device. It doesn't need to be on some fancy computer with some fancy server supporting it. You can deploy it. There is a startup in India called Kisan AI. Ms. Abdullah talk about the startup ecosystem. These are the kind of examples which can solve for it, whereby they get relevant crop information, climate information in the era of climate disruption. Using their phone, they can have large language models. So you said AI is the fashionable world. AI is being deployed on the device, not through some very sophisticated ecosystem, and they get real-time information. So that's agriculture for you. Student-led inclusivity. Jose, you talked about how do we make sure representation happens. One of the reasons representation doesn't happen is because they feel overwhelmed by the lack of connectivity to the language of English, for example. In India, we are running a program with an institute called Wadhwani Institute. It's a very famous AI institute where how to teach children English at local state levels, which has largely education system delivered in local language. How can they learn English skills? Similarly, for the government, one of the partnerships that Meta has deployed using AI tools is how to make sure somebody in a remote area finds the right skill set, training available on the government website. Governments actually have done a fabulous job of running programs, but the missing link is how do people access it? So if, let's say, in your region, you're running skilling programs, but somebody doesn't know how to go find that right skilling program, this pilot that we are running allows them to connect by just verbal assistance, saying, I am so-and-so from this region, I am in this language, I would like to learn about welding. And the AI assistant can help them find the right course in the nearby geographical region. The long and short of this story is, with open source technologies, what are you achieving? Inclusivity, you're achieving a lot of real-time feedback, making these models better, And the best part which addresses that, I think, Jose, you mentioned about sovereign AI, we do not think it is in contradiction. When you adopt open source technologies, you can have local deployment. You don't have to worry about your data floating elsewhere. You can use a large language model locally and create those solutions. Why is this possible? I think you talked about policy framework, super critical. Why do we need supportive policy frameworks? In India, for example, India is now decently famous for what is known as digital public infrastructure. It was a government initiative. Government created the digital rails based on the identity layer to deliver solutions like payment. Today in India, almost on a daily basis, we have billions of transactions purely cashless using your phones. How is that possible? Because you created what is called a digital infrastructure, which the government did, private sector built on it. And I think the DPI approach, the digital public infrastructure approach which the government took to AI will be the next frontier. And I'll tell you how. Government will build open compute resources, support open source technologies, open data sets, and support language translation models. If you combine all these four from a DPI perspective, many low-income countries, middle-income countries could leverage what they have not been able to do for 20 years within a few years. They don't have to go through the whole evolution cycle. They can crunch that. I was at the India IGF last week. Mr. Chengetai spoke there, and he was talking about how the world is so diverse. So for these 2.6 billion people, there is no uniform solution. AI could be that bridge. AI could be that glue which will bring all these people in. If you start connecting the dots, create low-cost, localized solutions in their language to deliver not just citizen services from the government, but support an ecosystem like startup ecosystem like we've done for agriculture, for education, for payments, financial sector. I'm sure in our part of the world, small ticket lending is an issue. Farmers want small ticket loans. How do you use AI-based analytics to do that? I think the world is full of possibilities, according to me. And I think the next frontier of the 2.6 billion people will be solved for much faster if we are able to adopt and embrace open source technologies, which is in sync with what the world needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, as you said, very optimistic perspective, but I think also a very tangible and real one on what technology can help us achieve. And you said technology for the purpose of technology, but I don't think you're right. It's not technology for the purpose of technology. It's technology for the purpose of developing the potential that individual societies and businesses have. It's not just to have the next one and the newest one. It's to actually use it in a way that is helpful for the communities that are so diverse, as you said, and build the bridges to help them, bring them along on where they feel they ought to be in their potential. So I want to continue with that line. And Tommy, when you spoke, responding to the question, you mentioned how we need opportunities to empower people to have the relevant skills and training to access AI. And through that skills and training, we can actually help them address some of the safety issues that they might face when coming online, or the big unknown of connecting to the internet and the newest technologies. So perhaps you can expand a little bit on that now. You have more time here to expand a bit what you and what Roblox does.
Thank you so much. What an honor to be here with all of you and hear your interesting perspectives. So what I'd like to do is focus and maybe take a little bit of time to share a little bit about what Roblox is. We are not quite as big as Meta. So I'd like to take some time to explain what Roblox is. So Roblox is a technology platform. It's a place where people can come to learn, to work, to create, to communicate with one another. And a lot of people come to actually design and create games and experiences, publish it out on our platform to millions. We now have over 6 million active developers developing experiences. We have tens of millions of games and experiences on Roblox, every type of game you can imagine. And it is a place where young people and children are thriving. It's where they're learning. It's where they're connecting with one another. And if you take a future vision of where this next generation will go, it is they will be in immersive worlds such as Roblox, learning with one another and doing things. We have now 90 million daily active users on our platform, so we are large and we are global. And so from a connectivity standpoint, it's so important to enable people from all generations to be able to connect with one another and learn from one another. The Roblox platform is someplace where they can do it. Because there are so many young people on our platform, we prioritize safety. So the area that I lead is called civility. And it is focused on, as I mentioned before, bridging the education gap between the generations, which is so important. It's giving parents the tools and the knowledge to be able to help their children to thrive online. So I have 2 daughters, and I actually laugh because I am in the technology industry, and when people talk about, if you see something that bothers you, go to a parent or a trusted adult. I'm not this expert, right? So I'm not a doctor or an academic. How do I know? Parents have no idea how to guide their children in this new internet world. It is up to us collectively to make sure that we have the power to be able to educate parents so they can help their children to thrive. And that is through industry. Industry needs to be responsible. Technology companies need to be responsible to make sure that they have the education materials available and getting it out there. It is the responsibility of governments to make sure that they're prioritizing digital literacy, not just as an afterthought, but truly and meaningfully integrating it into their education systems from the very beginning. By the time a child gets to 15 or 16 years old, it's too late. We need to start thinking about educating them the moment they get a digital device into their hands, making sure that it's age appropriate and making sure that the information going to the child is evidence-based and it's vetted. And so one of the things that we do at Roblox is we work with governments, we work with teacher organizations to make sure that we're developing curriculum. As an example, we're in South Korea, we're developing a curriculum, a civility digital literacy curriculum for teachers and a separate one for parents. So many parents come and say to me that they are so scared of the world that their children, the digital world that their children are going into. But fear is driven by the unknown. And if we can educate them, the more that we educate parents, the less fearful they are. And so at Roblox, our civility initiative is based on 3 different pillars. The first is safety. You got to know how to use the safety tools. You need to know that they're there, and then you need to know how to use them. If a bad actor comes on or you see bad content, you need to know where to report it. You need to know how to process it. That is something very important. The second is mental health and well-being. Loneliness is a global epidemic. Anxiety and depression, global epidemic. We need to wake up, we need to take this seriously, and we need to make sure that anywhere where there are young people, children, that we need to make sure that we're giving them the lifelines necessary in order to help them thrive. That is helplines, that is, and I know that the United Nations, in fact, we're partners with the United Nations in developing helplines for developing nations. We need to make sure that those lifelines are available and easily accessible. I'll give you an example. On Roblox, one of the things that we do in this world, we have a partner, Alo Yoga. They're an exercise brand. They developed a mindfulness experience. It's beautiful, beautiful music. It's about meditation and the importance of meditation. Within the first 5 days, we had 8 million people come on and learn how to meditate. The feedback that we got from children was unbelievable. There was one child who said, "My parents are getting a divorce. I'm so anxious and I'm so upset. But when I come into this experience, this Allo Yoga experience, and I put on my headphones, I can shut all that out and I can find peace." So technology is an area where we can bring that to young people. We have a responsibility to opening up these worlds that are positive and good so that they can learn from them. And then the final pillar that we focus on this in civility is digital literacy. And so, again, knowing how to respond to a scam, knowing how to identify a scam, knowing when to, again, have a healthy relationship with technology, to know yourself. Every single one of us sitting here is different, and our relationship with technology should be different. Maybe the amount of time that I spend online maybe is not as much as somebody like you. Maybe you can actually handle a little bit more. So not everybody is the same. So again, technology firms have the responsibility to continue to innovate. Roblox is continuously innovating and making sure that we're developing safety tools, mental health support tools, to allow people to adjust based upon their situation. So, I think that one of the things that we all have to recognize as we start focusing on bridging the gap, the digital divide, is also thinking about the education, because we need to get that flywheel started now. We're already behind. And so the fear that I have is that we won't collectively as a world wake up to the necessity of prioritizing digital literacy, mental health, and safety before it's too late. So I'm really glad we're having this discussion now.
Thank you so much for that. And I think you're bringing it full circle from what we've been discussing in the past hour and a half together. And you're also bringing in somehow to me this spirit of the IGF, because as I listen to you talk, it strikes me that it's not, when you say Roblox does this or one company does that, it's not about you going away and thinking about it by yourself. Because for you to be able to develop a curriculum, you have to work with the teachers. For you to be able to find the right partner to develop a mental health application, you have to talk to mental health specialists. You have to talk to the children themselves. You have to talk to the parents. We all have to have this thing that we come together and do at the IGF, where it's the true meeting of the minds and the meeting of the perspectives from very different backgrounds for us to then realize what are the challenges that we have and how can we bring these unusual partnerships together to actually find a response, whether we are talking about a tool for agriculture or a tool for children to navigate their online lives. It's very different perspectives, but it's technology in all its different forms, and technology is clearly a challenge, but it can also be the solution if we know how to use it wisely. So on that, I'd love to turn over to the audience and see if they have any reactions to what we've heard from our last four speakers.
Can I speak in French?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Ok, très bien. Je suis honorable Dr. Alpha Abdullah Diallo.
Hello, I'm Dr. Abdullah Abdallah. French channel is channel 2. Thank you very much. So I'm Dr. Alpha Abdullah Yalo. I work in the Parliament of Transition in Guinea, and I'm very happy to participate in this forum. This is my first time. First, I would like to give my salutations of the Parliament of Guinea to all of you, and I would like also to salute the King of Saudi Arabia and Crown Prince, and also I would like to salute all your panel and all the participants that are here today with us. I was very interested in all the comments, especially in what the Indian panelist was saying, and also the rest of the speakers. It is very important to agree in one fact. It is true, technology is very important, but I completely agree that what the colleague from India said, that the use of the technology is also very important, is as important as technology. So it is very important today to the literacy is very important today. And the reason for that is because today in Guinea we are writing a new constitution, and the use of technology has helped us to disseminate the content of the new constitution to the population, but also to foreign countries. And this has been enabled with technology and with the platform that we created. It was an interactive platform that was created. And today I can say that all Guineans know the content of our constitutions thanks to technology. And the good use of technology allows also that population adhere and agree wherever they are. And so the population agrees with the constitution. So recently, in all our country, and all our members of parliament have traveled everywhere in the country, and they knew them, and that was thanks to all the videos that was on the platform that I was talking now. All the works of the parliament were broadcasted on this platform. So everybody in Guinea and outside Guinea could follow the works of the MPs. So I agree with you. So technology is important, but the use of technology is even more important. And literacy in the use of technology will allow to multiply this positive side of technology. And also it will decrease its negative effects. And especially when we talk about young people, teenagers and children, we are very happy to participate to this forum. And I would like to request to all the panelists to give some examples regarding the good use of technology, above all with internet, in your own countries. So we can share your experiences. So we could share all your good practices. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur, pour votre intervention. So what we've heard here is the importance.
So thank you very much. We've heard
civic participation, which I think was something that the panel didn't mention, but it clearly is one more element of where technology can be of help. And we were asked as panelists to give some examples that the rest of the world could learn from, some good examples of the use of technology in your regions, in your countries, or in your organizations. So if anybody would like to take up that request from our speaker from the Parliament of Guinea. Srinath, please.
Yeah, firstly, I want to thank my friend from Kenya for acknowledging some of the things that I talked about. I can give you many examples of successful use of technology, but I'm sure everybody is much more competent than I am to talk about those successes. I'll give you a bit of a fun example if you, in the light of governance. For example, if you're writing the new constitution, how about using AI tools to make it interactive? Ask them how they would be able to apply the principles of constitution in their real life, right? Just as an example, when you do law writing, when you write a new legislation, in India now there is a trend that when they publish the law, they use illustrations. How will the law actually apply? I think it's a commendable exercise for people to have that connect when you write a law. Otherwise, law is written by lawyers, and then we only get to use it when it is challenged in the court. But if you suddenly start writing laws with illustrations of your day-to-day example of how that law would be applicable to you, that is one very interesting use of technology that one can do. But in terms of what you talked about, sir, in governance and how the parliamentarians, when they went to different parts of the country and people could connect to them, there are many such examples. One closer to my heart, which I really feel strongly about, obviously related to a meta platform, is on Instagram, is how you can take up your own causes of your country, which you want to highlight, and have the creator ecosystem kind of showcase it. Tourism is a great example in India, where the creators actually, they run a competition. India probably would be the only country which has a recognized national creator awards. So creators are given issues and ideas, and then they run a contest and creators showcase different locations in the country. Well, the marketing department of Department of Tourism could spend a lot of money, but if you have these creators with millions of followers showcasing different locations in the country, that goes a very, very long way. So there are many such examples, but more in the space of artificial intelligence, I would say there are examples where in the medical field, you are able to create solutions on diagnostic health. So for example, we are trying to work with a firm where the initial assessment of somebody in a remote area doesn't need immediate medical interaction. They can talk to a tool and asking them their symptoms, the initial assessment, so primary health care can be solved at a very fundamental level. So there are many such examples we can talk about. I mean, India with a population of 1.4 billion, there are many of millions such examples, but I'll pause there. But just to say, I mean, what Tammy said, I think is so critical that if technology companies do not take up these challenges, who else will? Because we recognize that our products have immense upside, but certain challenges which we have to all work together, collaborate together, so to solve for safety, literacy, awareness in itself. For example, in Instagram, there are 50 tools for parents to kind of help children. But how do we make sure everybody gets to know it? And every time we talk to a policymaker and we tell them about it, they're super happy that we are doing something. So I think it's about taking responsibility and driving it.
Thank you, Srinath. Tammy, Jose, Benga.
And I'd just like to add on to this in terms of a recommendation. So a year and a half ago, we hosted a workshop with the Digital Wellness Lab at Boston Children's Hospital, Harvard Medical, and we worked on a hypothesis. In 5 to 10 years from now, the online world can be safer and more civil than in real life. If we were to make that a reality, what would need to happen in technology innovation, policy, and education? We invited over 100 thought leaders from around the world, from safety NGOs to academics, researchers, child psychiatrists, and industry, and we brought in teens. And we learned a lot. To cut to the chase, the one thing that came out so strongly was to include teens meaningfully through everything that we do. And I can honestly say, I work for a technology company, and while we certainly have focus groups, things like that, we don't actually, from beginning to end, include youth meaningfully. This year, from that workshop, we changed things. We've announced a teen council that we are integrating into our work. One of the funny things about when we were in this workshop, all of these smart people were talking about things that should be done on the internet, what should be done to make platforms safer. And this young 17-year-old woman started shaking her head. And she looked at us, and I looked at her, what's going on? She said, that's not how we use it. That's not how we use the internet. We got it wrong, all of these smart people. So as you're writing and drafting this new constitution, please remember children, please remember teens, and incorporate them meaningfully through the development of that framework.
Thank you for that. Jose, then Gabanga, and then Ala.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup pour sa question. Je vais parler en
Thank you for this question. It is easier for me to speak in French. Thank you.
I will give two examples and then reflect a little bit about this issue as a whole. Like I think that the example that I'm going to give is once again of the homeless workers movement in Brazil, because I think that they have a very good initiative. Maybe one of the members here is in the audience, Ale Barbosa, which is Contrate Quem Luta, work, hire who fights. I think that's a good translation for it. The idea is to the idea was to create a platform linked to WhatsApp through which people could hire for like services in their houses, services in their office, or even like for delivery services, hire people who were homeless and were working together and were like part of the initiatives of this movement, which is very big throughout Brazil. So I think this is a great initiative. And one thing that they always discussed was we need to appropriate these technologies in a way that they also like serves our benefits when we do not have the means to reach another platform, other platforms, other delivery platforms, for instance, or services as a whole. So this was a very important initiative. And another one was a platform that was built with in cooperation between an NGO in Brazil which works on research in the Amazon. I don't want to be unfair here, but it's better that I don't say the name because I'm not 100% sure I can't remember exactly the name of the organization. But they did this platform through which indigenous peoples themselves would include data on deforestation for them to have like a better assessment on the ground and that just not rely on satellite imagery to map deforestation sites in Brazil. So like this was a very important initiative, which I think represents not only co-creation, but also self-governed data. And I would say as a whole on especially when we think about providing public services through technology, is that we always remember to keep the analog. Many people do not know how to use technology. Many people don't have access to it. We talked a lot about connectivity. That's crucial. And also when they have access to it, we may face challenges regarding, for instance, language, which has already been talked about in this panel, or even the possibility of the capacity of explaining oneself, of understanding what one's rights are. That's why the human aspect is fundamental to be maintained throughout this process.
Thank you for that. Kapenya?
Yes, thanks. I mean, that's a direct question. It's as direct as it gets. And half of my work is in digital rights, human rights in digital age. And over the last few years, one of the most important uses that I've seen young people put technology used to is in political participation, in civic participation. I spend my time worrying about how the digital civic space is closing, and I see young people do creative things, conversations that you can't have on TV stations because of concerns, conversations you can't have on the radio. You can have those conversations in safe digital spaces. And I think that the example of writing the Constitution and getting feedback from young people is a perfect example of political participation. It's not just about elections. It's not just about choosing leaders. It's about envisioning the future together, participating in it, and making sure that young people are not involved in tokenistic examples, but they can actually participate in this. And we've seen that happen with a very good example that I was involved with is in 2011 the electoral agency at the time in Nigeria had said you have to wait for the voting to finish and then for 4 days before you see the results. I'm not that patient. My parents may be that patient, but I want to see the results immediately. And so a group of us gathered, designed a mobile app. We used the name, the acronym of what the Electoral Commission had used. It was Registered Voter Database, so we called it ReVoter. We created an app such that while we were on the queue and people were voting and the results were announced in each location, we were able to use that platform to aggregate and to see what the result was. And when the results were eventually announced, to say, okay, you know what, we think this is correct because the margin of error is not large, and that is where, you know, technology is useful in participation.
Thank you so much. Ala?
I think the example that I want to give, it highlights what you have been mentioning. The question was, how can digital or technology help in, and let's us as the panelists share our learning and example. And I think as DCO, one of the things that we thought is the exact same thing. How can we enable governments and countries to share their successes and their digital solutions that they are using in their digital transformation. This is why we created a platform called Impact, where all our member states can list their digital solutions that they are using for their digital government for other countries to learn from, to share their experience, and why reinvent the wheel? If a solution is deployed, for example, a digital ID solution is deployed in one country that is successful, that has been working very well, another country in need of such a similar solution, why do we have to do it again? Share the experience of another country and just take it and deploy it. And this is why we created the Impact. And I think this wouldn't be possible without the technology and without having those platforms that you can share the experience. Another live example is that before conferences, if we do not have access on internet, our panel now, it's accessible through live stream online. It means that all conversation, all questions is being streamed to millions of people without being physically here. So this is a live example of how technology is enabling us to share our knowledge, to even hear different voices at the same time.
That's a great example. Sally, you had your hand up first, and then Thelma, and then we go to you.
Thank you, and I think this builds on the last two comments. And I'm really impressed by the way that you spoke about using technology to improve transparency and engagement in your policy development. And building on that, I think there are important lessons and opportunities through that, which is the technology can allow coalitions to develop. We are part of the Global Encryption Coalition, for example, which has over 400 members around the world who spot threats to encryption or identify opportunities to promote better online security. And as you said, they compare and learn from each other. So where one stakeholder may have encountered a particular challenge and successfully advocated and worked in their local community, those are resources that are shared online through this coalition. This is almost all done virtually. To support activities in other communities. And we see that kind of civil society coalition building happening online in really powerful ways. And I think my advice to our colleague is to be open to that kind of advocacy that happens from civil society, from your communities, on the basis of the transparency that you're providing in support of your Constitution is not just about consultation, but about building together and leveraging your civil society that is able to organize online to be part of that conversation. And if we circle back to some of the comments earlier about connectivity, I think what you're speaking about in terms of involving parents is every bit as important as when we think about connectivity solutions. being able to engage those communities, giving them agency in the conversation about the solutions that will work for them in the languages they speak, consistent with the culture that they are coming from, is what will make the connectivity powerful for them. This is not a drop connectivity in and leave. This is about enabling those communities to be part of that solution. And I think if that's the approach we take, we will go much farther than we've been able to go so far. And those communities will be then part of building the digital economy of the future and not being on the receiving end of it.
Thank you. Thelma, you wanted to say a few words as well.
Thank you. And I think I'd also like to commend our colleague from Guinea. At Smart Africa, what we do is to leverage what countries are doing well to, show the other countries, so there's leapfrogging and you don't fall through the same mistakes that they may have done. So one practical example, for instance, in the healthcare is what Rwanda is doing using Zipline, where they are using drones powered by AI. And what this AI does is to measure and check and know where blood supplies are low, for instance. And the drone takes it directly to these remote areas. And these are places that are usually hard to reach. And this is a practical example within the healthcare. But also even on the policy side, we are starting to use AI to harmonize. It's much easier when you have so many different policies on the same topic. You can always leverage AI to harmonize. In the same vein, countries can also leverage the same technology to learn on what are the shortfalls of my policy, for instance. So these are some of the things. There are so many other examples, but these are what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Imagawa. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I was very inspired very much by today's discussion among panelists and also from the audience. And it seems to me that there are a lot of discussion about using the digital technology in school or education process. And I think it's very important to build up some specific projects to involve a lot of stakeholders. Let me introduce the example in my country. It's not my ministry, but Ministry of Education. And we introduced the specific project called Liga School Project. And it provides, it distributes a PC to every student in the elementary school and the junior high school student. In that way, the vendors, industry sector, vendors and telecom operators are incentivized to join the project because they can get money from the government in that way. And also, teachers and the students, of course, involved. And also parents should be involved because the homeworks have to be submitted via through the PC or tablet. And also parents have to prevent the students from looking at making access to the illegal or harmful information. So I think specific project can involve a lot of the stakeholders, and it's very important for the government and also industry sector or civil society and academia to build up the specific, very good project to involve a lot of stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're coming up to the end of our session. Actually, we have 1 minute left. For the 2 hours that we've had together. So I'm going to ask the indulgence of the audience to maybe bear with us at our panel for a little longer. I understand we have another intervention.
Merci bien. Je voudrais aussi m'exprimer en français, si vous le permettez.
Everyone?
Je voulais partager l'expérience du Sénégal. Je suis coordonnatrice du... Voilà. Je coordonne un fonds qui est dédié à l'accès aux services universels donc dans les zones déshéritées. Et,
Just a moment, ma'am, please, because I don't think we have interpretation.
Can you hear English? So, I am Mrs. Job. I coordinate a fund that confirms that has a fund for kids for digital inclusion. What you mentioned today is very important when we speak about ethical access for internet, where we have a positive change. Actually, we reach zones sometimes where we search for connectivity, and some teenagers find a way to connect. So the state services are very important today in this digital world. My friend from Guinea mentioned the services they guarantee, but also we have societies that are not well structured, and because of this new components digitally, in addition to data bases and usage that is not really known for the community. So these actually are changing the modalities of the society, and these new AIs ask us and put in new challenges, and we ask ourselves, where are we heading, where our societies are heading, if we are really serving them, what are we doing? So these questions related to training to women, women who are forgotten, or when we speak of uncomprehensive model of internet usage by teenagers, it makes us ask how and what is the future of societies that are already traditional in their way of living. So we should not forget that these training are important, experiences are very important, their feedback also, to know how can we actually keep up with these transformations and have a positive transformation in society without unstructured values and destruction of values, cultural values especially, that are important for our life together. So how can everything be actually, how can this be an ally to us? This is my remark. That's it. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup, madame. I wanted to ask our panelists to each share a word in takeaway, but I am being told that we are running out of time. So I think I will share one word myself. Actually, two words, and those two words are thank you. Thank you to all of you here who have spent the last 2 hours in conversation with us, to all the speakers for making your way here to Riyadh and sharing your expertise and knowledge, to everybody in the audience who has listened and participated. Thank you to the IGF Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group who pulled this session together, and the coordinators, Manny and Chris, for bringing us together and inviting us for the conversation. And thank you to the IGF for making this possible, and I hope we can have many more conversations like this together. So a big round of applause to the speakers and to all of you.